Coup de grace. After 4 strikes with Unseen Blade, your next dispatch, or if you're sub, Eviscerate or Black Powder, will be performed as a coup de grace, doing 40% increased damage if the target's phase gain 5% stacks of Flawless Form, which then translates to 15% mastery for 5 seconds.
Whoa!
And you go,
Yeah!
but how do you get 4 strikes with Unseen Blade? Well, you press Feint 4 times.
Yes.
No, you don't.
No.
Because that doesn't cause that's phasing. That doesn't cause that. What does cause Unseen Blades is 1,000 Cuts or Flicker Strike. 1,000 Cuts being Slice and Dice just gives your auto attacks a chance, and Flicker Strike take area damage or dodge and evasions active triggers Unseen Blade every 5 seconds. So when does coup de grace happen?
There you go.
I fucking know.
Yeah.
WeakAura tell me. WeakAura tells me when it does, so I press the button. Exactly. So, and that's awkward because you think about the complexity, right?
We are going to be so screwed when like Luxthros and Afanar do their I'm retiring from being the
If
I am no longer the WeakAura slave.
Well, if Luxthros retires from WeakAuras, I'm quitting the game. Like I can't play anymore. It's over. I know what I have to do.
But like legit though.
I have to play Holy Priest.
I don't want to literally say to you for real.
Or no, I just play Prop Pal. Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to just throw a few things that I want to track onto a WeakAura, but yeah, I suppose a lot of the discussion about like add-ons and WeakAuras feeling mandatory, you then, mix that up with some of the class design stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, and then think about all of the things you need to track if you are pushing your keys.
Yeah. It makes it feel like
A lot of stuff.
it does feel like random bullshit go instead of here's a design you can play around, which is frustrating because fun designs you could play around felt like the goal of Dragonflight, and they've just been kind of going, well, if you just a little bit more, now it's random bullshit go o'clock. Like, it's kind of interesting because like 1,000 Cuts, right? You go, well, how complicated is it that your attacks have a chance to trigger Unseen Blade? It's just fine. Just track it, bro. And you go, well, what about shadow techniques? Because that's auto attacks do a load of shit when you're sub rogue. So now your auto attacks have a chance to do about 7 different things. And then you have 4 different things on your, like, what do you call it? 4 different things on your hotbar light up or your WeakAuras light up. And you go, what the fuck is happening? Oh, God. And what happens then, right? What happens whenever that starts to be the player experience again? Then people tune out. People don't want to. Like, it becomes impossible to optimize because it's all just random bullshit go all the time. And then you lose the interest in actually like controlling what you do. You go, oh, what the fuck's what is it like? What does it matter if I try really hard whenever it's just the random bullshit go meter decided, or like the random bullshit go metronome decided to be on big damage when my cooldowns came up, as opposed to low damage. It's the same. It's like it's a complex design outcome that feels the same as what was it called? I can't remember the name of it. You know the mage talent. That was the one. It was the option in the old talents with Rune of Power. It was just your damage go up and down randomly. They just like tick up and down, and you're like, well, if it's just down when I press my cooldowns, I lose like 4% damage for no fucking reason. But it's not strong enough to hold for. So you're just like, I've just got a low dice roll my damage.
So it's just a thing then. It's not really gameplay.
Yeah, it's just a thing that happens, which was the point. It was Rune of Power's gameplay. This one, Incanter's Flow. Yeah, that was it. It's like, okay, well, Rune of Power's gameplay and Incanter's Flow is not. And it's like, well, what the fuck are you doing? What is this? I'm so happy Rune of Power's gone. Just a side note. But like, yeah, I feel like it's difficult to optimize around, and that'll just kind of put people off from trying to optimize around it. And this, because this isn't like gameplay complexity, it's just stuff complexity. It's just simulation craft complexity. More than it feels like actual like choice complexity, which is where I ultimately, but like my tirade against these ultimately comes to that point where you're like, there's nothing wrong with the idea. It's just that the execution feels a little bit like, why is it tweaking just numbers seemingly fucking randomly? It's like, here's your damage and your damage on the 7th night of like the full moon. There you go.
Yeah.
Like the 8th full moon on a leap year, bam, there you go. Like, you do an extra 7 damage. You're like, what? And then it kind of goes, well,
it's not elegant. It's inelegant.
It's inelegant. And then it goes, well, what's the design goal here? Is the design goal to make it so ridiculous that it doesn't matter to be optimal anymore? Then you're doing damage to the concept of like actually playing your game for mastery. You're making your game like, because I always end up using fighting, even though fighting games are PvP, I always end up using them as like a comparison because they've been through the whole ringer of like design complexity and ease of use, and you know how hard is too hard, how random is too random, and you just like you go and play a little bit of like Dungeon Fighter Online or DNF Duel, and you're like, what is this absolute clown show? Or you're playing that like Sailor Moon S fighting game, you're like, what do you mean? It's just completely half random half the time, and most of the skill element is removed by it just being a fucking clown show all the time. And then you've got games that are a lot more like purist, and you're like, okay, well, what do people actually like? People seem to like a little bit more when there's some combination of simple to learn and easy to learn and hard to master. But it feels like why are you throwing the like mastery away by having stuff randomly kind of happen through complexity? Is it too much of the track? Does it matter if people track it? Why are you putting stuff in the game that it doesn't matter if people are tracking or not? Why are you turning damage output into RNG? Why are you kind of doing that? And you're not, right? And you're kind of not.
Yeah.
Because it should even out across good players and bad players. Because where is skill in World of Warcraft actually come from? Where does it come from? Does it come from you being able to do your damage optimally in terms of your rotation to perfection? Does it come from, you know, being able to do your damage optimally by, as a caster, say, reducing downtime by pre-moving and mastering your movement mechanics? Does it, you know, is it more from, you know, does mastery come from...
I'd say more things like that.
Yeah, does mastery more come from, you know, being able to hit your stun properly in an M+, which means instead of dodging, you have to do all your damage? That's the kind of thing of like, I would love to have a really long, in-depth like discussion with the designers. Maybe even like have, I don't even know who would be on the team, but like, what's the actual goal here?
Well, that's the problem. And actually, one of the things I was going to say earlier, you were kind of like wondering, you were talking about the complexity at high end, the execution complexity also included in that, and then all of this. You can then maybe think, well, is there a big vision that's unifying these things together? Or is it there are people working and making execution challenges, boss fights? So they're doing that. And then there are people doing this. They're both doing their thing. But how do those come together? And maybe then that's where some would say it's coming together at a place where there is a lot of stuff, a lot of complexity, but maybe sometimes a lack of elegance. Maybe that's the thing. I don't know. So I said maybe. Yeah,
that's what I would love to. I would love to like.
Yeah,
I'd love to just see and even internal documents of like how much, you know, has there been a meeting for say the War Within? Was there a big sit down and Ian sits and brings all the design and all the encounter designers, the class designers around and goes, right, well, here's, you know, we're going to go to retreat for, you know, the 3 weeks of like, we're going to hammer out what playing this game actually means. Or is it kind of, what's the term I'm looking for? I don't want to say accidental because that sort of has a negative thing to it, but I can't think of the other word. Is it kind of emergent? Emergent, that's the word. Is WoW's gameplay an emergent property of all of these teams doing stuff separately?
100% in my view. 100%.
That's why I look at all these different things and go, it feels like it kind of feels random when the game feels good to play and bad to play, because these are just different things moving independently of each other all around. And it's like, oh, sorry, you had the bad combination this time. It's like, do you roll 3 dice in terms of like class encounter and dungeons? This is a really, really loose example, but like you roll 3 dice, right? Just normal 6-sided die. It's like, okay, well, there's a 1, a 5, and a 2. Oh, the game's shit. But how do you get the game to be good? Well, you need to roll a 1-1-1 or a 3-3-3 or a 6-6-6. So you run like a 1-6-6 and the game's like, it's okay, but it's not great. And it's like, how close are those numbers together in their intent? And it feels slightly kind of just emergent, just roll the dice every expansion,
It is a bit of a-
every patch to see what happens.
Everyone's going to make their thing, and we'll hope for the best. But
It feels like that, and like I'm sure they talk to each other, but I imagine they're also a little bit too bogged down.
well,
with
it's game
what they do
development
to-
at this scale.
Yeah,
even,
exactly.
Even this applies to the narrative. Like the Trader's Rest story, it's like fine in a self-contained way. But then you're like, wait, so everybody actually knew the Drakthir were about, and no one fucking said anything. Also, why is Neltharion acting like such a villain at this point? And it's, there's like quite a few issues with that story, and the reason is there was direction from maybe a feature lead in making that, yeah, but that wasn't like a big intended story. It was just a story that people made as they were working in the game. They're like, well, it doesn't fit that well. It's like, well, yeah. It's just like how they removed that the Arathi humans in War Within have been fighting the Nerubians for centuries. They removed that from the website. Because your point about like, they're Nerubians. They live up in Northrend. How did they get from there to here? War of the Spider, they lose. They flee, whatever. So they removed the line of the hundreds of years because it doesn't really make sense for Nerubians
be there
to just be there as or whatever. You just think like, okay, well, they probably removed the hundreds of years reference to, well, I mean, who fucking knows? Who fucking knows? I just, you can't really trust it because you don't know, like, well, was it hundreds of years? I don't know. They've removed the marketing copy. Does that mean they haven't worked out the story yet? Are these a different group of Nerubians? Are these Nerubians who fled before, during, after the War of the Spider? How, blah, blah, blah.
Or was that a copywriter who was writing some marketing copy and thought that sounded cool, and then no one?
It does.
And then no one from the lore historian team or the story team actually were like tasked with go over this with a fine tooth comb because they were showing it and went, it's fine. It's fine. Make it live. I'm tired.
Yeah, and then it gets changed because somebody fires somebody a Slack message and they're like, you know what, that is a problem. We haven't made a call yet. Remove the line.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I think a lot of it just does end up being bottom up because that's one of the few ways you can actually make game stuff at this scale. Because it's got like think about the number of staff working in this game. Like, how the hell can the director of the game actually keep up with all that on a one-to-one basis?
No, you can't.
Right, one-to-one is obviously impossible, but like even team lead to director, like it's a quantity of people, right? Like it's really hard to get a cohesive. It must be really hard to get a cohesive design.
Yeah, because
with
you would need
that many motherfuckers making a game.
because you would need to hire people whose job it is to keep cohesion, which basically means you have to have a lot of people working under Ian that have jobs that go, well, what is my job? My job is to report to Ian and pass messages and vibes up and down the chain consistently, or either we work Ian into the bin. It's like one of the examples is, and I'm
That's
only
like ADs, right?
Yeah.
Like assistant directors.
yeah. It's like I only bring up FF14 in this example because it's one of the games we have. It's a similar enough game in a bunch of ways, and we have insight into the production because Yoshibi talks about it. And like that man just runs himself ragged, checking everything. Like he's just like, yeah, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. Nothing escapes him because he's got the whole like fine tooth comb over it. And clearly he's aged 500 years in like the 10 years he's been on that project.
And also,
So clearly, like that's
has that scaled? FF14's kind of suffered a bit when FF15 has
16. Yeah.
16. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's a case of like, is that sustainable at 500 devs pushing out content all the time? I have absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. I wouldn't suggest one way or the other because I literally don't know. But the winds are blowing and it doesn't really seem that way to me.
Yeah.
Which is why we look at like, 'cause I saw someone mention the Larian Studio CEO there, and you go, yeah, they had a set of circumstances that allowed them to make one kind of more or less holistic vision in Baldur's Gate 3. And they like orchestrated them way themselves to make it that way, and they had the time and the budget to do so comfortably, which is not the case for Blizzard under Microsoft, under Activision Blizzard. Which is, sorry, is that product slightly late? I'm going to kill all of you.
So yeah, I think we're just trying to do a bit of trying to explain reality
Yeah.
Emphasis on the trying. We could also talk about the Diabloist Warlock.